This is a financial video for business studies on costs. So within this video, what we're going to be looking at is the difference between total variable costs and fixed costs. And then we're going to be looking at that combination of the two to make total costs. So to begin with, let's have a look at the graph, because what we can see is fixed costs is the same regardless of how many units are produced and sold. Whilst variable costs, we can see that the more units that are being produced, your total variable costs change. So that gives you a bit of a clue, an indication of the differences already. So a variable cost, and when I say variable cost, I'm looking at per unit, that is directly based on that output. So the more you produce, the greater your total variable cost will be, because your total variable cost is based on all your output, all the units that's being produced. And the calculation for that is your variable cost per unit times by all units produced, in other words, your output. Whilst your fixed costs, they're not dependent on output, and they have to be paid regardless of what is being produced. So a firm may have many different types of fixed costs, one example being rent. If you're paying rent and you've got that contractual agreement with your landlord, it doesn't matter if you produce 0 products one month and you have no sales, you will still have to pay that rent regardless. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at one of my favourite coffee shops, which is local to me, and it's just an independent called Woodlawn Coffee. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at their variable costs. So think about it in terms of, well, what do they sell? Obviously, they do sell coffee beans, but they also need the coffee beans to actually make their coffees with. So that's going to be a variable cost. They also need milk, because obviously, for example, their lattes, their flat whites, milk is a key ingredient. And for every coffee they sell, they're going to use more of that milk. So therefore, if they sell out of milk because they're selling so many coffees, they're going to have to buy more milk. And they also sell food to take away. So again, for example, sandwiches. If they sell more sandwiches, they will need more bread. They'll need more filling. They'll need more packaging. All of these are examples of variable costs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give you a hypothetical example. Now, these are not the variable costs of Woodlawn. They're probably not even realistic. So to begin with, let's imagine it was 15p for bread. And this is just on average for one unit or for one sandwich. 1p for butter, 10p for the filling, and 4p for the packaging. Well, straight away, what we can do is we can work out, well, that'll be 30p per sandwich. That's how much it costs them to produce one sandwich. But let's imagine they sell 100 in a day. Well, then we'd have to work out the total variable costs for that sandwich in that day, and that would be 30p times by 100, which is £30. Now, obviously, there's 52 days in a year, and let's imagine they were open for every single day. That'd be 1,560. Now, obviously, that's just for one type of product that Woodlawns sell. They sell lots of different products, so hence why this is a very, very simplified example. Now, Woodlawns, though, they also have fixed costs. So let's think about the types of fixed costs they have. Now, again, they've got labour, so that labour might be on salaries, and the salaries will have to be paid. Also, they might have got a loan out, and that loan, again, there'll be repayments with interest, which have to be paid monthly, regardless of how much they produce. And maybe they don't own the shop outright, so for example, they might rent it, and therefore they'll have to pay the landlord's rent. So again, let's imagine, and just going to repeat myself, hypothetical, but not the real costs, but let's imagine the rent was £20,000 a year. Let's imagine insurance was £2,500. Let's say their loan repayment was £5,000 for that year, and their salaries were £10,000 for that year. So what that would mean is their fixed costs were £37,500. So once we've got our total variable costs and we've got our total fixed costs, then what we can start to do is we can start to think about total costs, and we can start to add them together to get our total costs. So your total variable costs plus your fixed cost equal your total costs.